By the time Linda Parker's gavel hit the table for the last time, the room was already turning on her. It slipped out of her hand, rolled off the edge, and smacked the tile, while 200 people watched the woman who ran Maple Glen's HOA like a private kingdom lose control in real time. 21 days earlier, she was still mailing me fines for visual blight and unsafe smoke events on land her homeowners association had no legal power to touch. I'm Ethan Reed, retired Army engineer, and I manage 480 acres of timberland in southern Georgia. This is a working tract, not a decorative backyard. We do prescribed burns, thinning cuts, erosion control, fire break maintenance, and access road grading on a calendar that follows weather fuel load and state rules. You miss timing out here, you don't get a polite warning, you get wildfire risk. Maple Glen Estate sits along my eastern boundary behind brick columns and a stone sign that says, "Refined Country Living." New houses, tight covenants, trimmed hedges, porch furniture that looks untouched. Their homeowners association loves order, and for a while I assumed that was their business. Then Linda decided it was mine. The first clash happened on a bright, dry morning with steady wind from the northwest. Perfect burn conditions fully permitted crew-briefed water trailers staged. I was checking a drip torch line when a golf cart bounced down my dirt access road like it owned the lane. Linda stepped off in white sneakers, a pastel polo, and that expression people wear when they mistake confidence for authority. She didn't ask what we were doing. She shouted, "Stop this immediately. You're flooding our community with smoke and destroying property values." I told her, "You're on private land outside HOA jurisdiction, and this burn is legal. Please leave." She took photos of my crew tags and said, "We'll handle this through legal channels." That phrase, "we'll handle this," showed up in my mailbox 3 days later. Cream envelope gold logo certified mail. 3 violations total, due $1,250, 10-day deadline. Unapproved landscape modification. Atmospheric nuisance. Failure to maintain neighborhood-adjacent visual standards. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't missing a punchline. I didn't call to argue because phone calls disappear. I opened a binder, then another, then another. Deed, parcel maps, county GIS screenshots, state burn permit, ignition log, wind records, photos with timestamps, certified receipt stubs. If they wanted paperwork, I was going to give them paperwork so clean even their attorney would hate seeing it. The next week, Linda escalated. She filed a county complaint saying I was doing industrial open-air burning without required safeguards. Code enforcement came out, inspected everything, checked permit numbers, verified my setup, and closed the case before noon. 2 days later, she filed a second complaint, this time claiming unlicensed land clearing operation. Same result. When agencies didn't move for her, she changed tactics. I found a survey crew on my south trail staking points 50 yards inside my line. They had a work order from Maple Glen HOA for historic community easement verification. No such easement existed, not recorded, not pending, not disputed by any legitimate instrument. I asked the crew lead to stop work, photograph the order, and captured each stake location before they packed up. One of the guys quietly said they were told the neighbor is non-compliant and encroaching. I said, "The neighbor has a deed and a map. Tell your office to read both." That night, I called Daniel Brooks, a land use attorney who never raises his voice and never wastes words. He reviewed my documents and said, "You can sue now, sure. But if you want this solved and not just litigated, show the residents what they're paying for first." So I did. I started with quiet conversations at driveways and mailbox clusters in Maple Glen. Not a campaign, not a speech tour, just, "Have you had compliance issues lately?" Most people gave the same tight laugh before answering. Ryan and Chloe Bennett got 2 fines because the shutter repaint matched sand drift, not desert linen. Marcus Hill, former Marine, got cited because his flagpole exceeded an internal guideline by 14 inches. A retired teacher paid penalties over temporary contractor debris while redoing her kitchen. One family got hit for a kid's basketball hoop visible from the street during quiet visual hours, whatever that means. Every letter had the same structure, same escalation steps, same legal threat language. Failure to cure, board review, referral to council. It wasn't random enforcement, it was a template-driven pressure system. Then came the call that changed everything. Susan Cole, Maple Glen's former treasurer, asked to meet at a diner off Highway 27. She arrived with a thick envelope and sat down like someone who'd already decided she was done protecting people. Inside were ledger extracts, vendor invoices, reimbursement forms, and meeting minute drafts that didn't match the posted minutes residents saw. Payments labeled Perimeter Clarification Services, legal retainers charged to external nuisance containment, consulting invoices from a firm sharing an address with Linda's close friend. Susan didn't dramatize anything. She just pointed at dates and amounts and said, "I asked for an independent review." It was tabled, then removed from minutes. That sentence hit harder than any accusation. Now we had pattern, motive, and paper trail. Daniel helped us build a timeline that could survive scrutiny. No rumors, no inflated language, only verifiable entries. 4 columns: action taken, authority, claimed, money spent, legal basis. In too many rows, legal basis was blank. Where it existed, it cited covenants applicable only to lots inside Maple Glen, never to my parcel. We prepared resident packets with source documents, page numbers, and plain language summaries. No one had to trust me. They could read it themselves. As annual meeting night approached, Maple Glen got tense. People stopped chatting at the dog park and started whispering in pairs. Board members avoided eye contact. Linda's weekly email suddenly leaned on words like unity, civility, misinformation, and outside agitation. She framed everything as an attack on the community, which was convenient because the real attack was already in their bank statements. I kept working my land during the day and building my case at night. There were moments it got heavy, not because I didn't know the facts, but because fights like this drain your hours and your headspace. I'd come in after dark, smelling like smoke and diesel, sit at my kitchen table with stacks of documents, and realize I'd spent more time on legal prep than on harvest planning that week. There was a point around midnight on a Tuesday when I nearly boxed everything up and told Daniel to just file suit and let the court sort it out in a year or two. Then I looked at one photo from Susan's packet, a ledger line with legal spend jumping, while reserve maintenance dipped, and remembered this wasn't only about my boundary line anymore. Residents were funding intimidation they didn't approve while being told it was community protection. That was enough. I went back to work. Thursday night, the Maple Glen clubhouse was packed past fire code comfort. Linda opened the meeting smiling like a campaign ad, thanked volunteers, praised landscaping consistency, and delivered a financial overview so broad it explained nothing. She mentioned legal expenses once quickly and moved on. Open forum started. She tried to restrict speakers to members in good standing. A homeowner stood and cited the bylaws allowing invited non-members by majority consent. Hands went up. Motion carried. I was recognized. I walked to the front with a banker's box and a laser pointer. First slide, county-certified plat map parcel numbers highlighted. I traced Maple Glen's legal boundary, then my property line slow enough that nobody could claim confusion. My tract is outside your homeowners association. Always has been. Second slide, chronology of board actions against non-member property, complaint filings, survey contract, attorney billing references, all tied to dates, invoices, and outcomes. Linda interrupted. "This presentation is inaccurate and defamatory." I answered. "Then let's correct each line item with documents." She banged the gavel. Out of order. I didn't step back. I read invoice numbers out loud, amount by amount. Survey services, $8,640. External counsel retainer expansion, $14,000. Strategic compliance consulting, $6,200. Each entry mapped to actions outside board authority. You could hear people turning pages in their packets, checking me in real time. Marcus spoke next, crisp and controlled. He laid out selective enforcement with copies of notices and cure deadlines. Ryan followed with his family's violation history, including one citation issued while they were waiting on approved paint delivery, delayed by storms. A retired CPA in row 3 asked the board why legal spend had tripled while reserve allocations for drainage and roof repairs decreased. Linda replied with polished fog, complex legal environment, proactive governance posture, maintaining standards amid external pressures. The words were smooth, the numbers were not. Then Susan stood in the back and identified herself as former treasurer. The room shifted immediately. She confirmed she had raised repeated concerns about off-scope expenditures and requested independent review that never happened. She said she was prepared to provide supporting records if requested by the membership. Linda tried one more control play, announced a recess nobody wanted. No one moved. She threatened removal of disruptive attendees. There was no security team, no enforcement plan, just a social committee volunteer gripping a clipboard and avoiding eye contact. The threat dissolved on contact with reality. So I put forward one motion designed to translate abuse into household impact. If these off-boundary expenditures were proper and necessary, approve a special assessment tonight, $20 per home to replenish reserves now. The silence that followed was sharper than yelling. Then voices rose from three corners at once. For what? Who approved that? Why are we paying for this? You could see people doing math in their heads and then doing a second round of math about trust. Marcus stood and moved for a no-confidence vote against the entire board. Ryan seconded immediately. The parliamentarian checked Article 7 read procedure into the mic and called for ballots. Paper moved fast when people were angry and clear. Volunteers counted at the front table under full view. Linda kept repeating, "This process is irregular, but repetition doesn't reverse arithmetic." When the count was announced, it wasn't narrow and it wasn't ambiguous. The board was removed effective immediately under the bylaws. Linda looked at the tally sheet, then at the crowd, then back at the sheet like maybe numbers had changed while she blinked. She reached for her badge, missed once, took a breath and set it on the table. No apology, no speech, no final lecture about standards. She stepped down from the dais and walked out between rows of neighbors she had fined for shutters, bins, flags, and chalk drawings on driveways. Behind her, residents were already asking how to appoint an interim committee and commission an independent financial review. In front of her, the exit doors opened and closed, and that was the end of her authority. I didn't follow her out. I packed my exhibits, capped my marker, and took one last look at the projector screen still showing the parcel map she had spent weeks pretending didn't matter. Outside, the night smelled like damp pine and cold concrete, and for the first time in a month, nobody was telling me where my property line was. Power can bluff people for a while, but it can't outvote the truth once the receipts hit the table. If there's one thing this taught me, it's simple authority without limits is just abuse with better stationery.